This kind of action is truly unheard of. Becca collected her husband's genetic information through cloning, carrying him for 10 months to bring him back to life. His childhood was filled with his mother's care, and in adulthood, he entered a world of passionate marriage. Who would ever think of such a ridiculous idea? The friendship between the two children began in their youth, and it has remained unbroken. With the consent of their families and the blessing of friends, their marriage was confirmed without a doubt. Even more astonishing, no matter their age, they maintained a relationship without arguments. Their actions showed us that perfect love is not a fantasy, and that life should indeed be filled with such warm days. However, one day, they decided to go on an adventure in an uninhabited zone. While in the car, they happily discussed when to expect a new life. After entering the uninhabited zone, Becca suddenly said she needed to use the restroom. As she was about to squat, the sudden sound of brakes screeching from behind was deafening, like thunder crashing down. Her head rang, and her eyes went blank as if time had frozen. She sat back in the passenger seat, and the sight before her made her heart stop. The man's lifeless body lay there, still. From that day on, Becca's life became eerily quiet. She spent every day in a gloomy mood. Each day, she would stare at photos for a long time, but her heart could never find peace. One day, at the hospital, she learned that cloning could bring the deceased back to life. But the premise was that the deceased's genetic material had to be intact, and then a 10-month pregnancy process would resurrect them. Once revived, the child's appearance would be almost identical to that of the original. His memories and consciousness would be erased, leaving behind a completely new being. However, the man had long been buried. To obtain his genes, she would have to exhume his body. So, she sought help from the man's parents, hoping to exhume the body and extract the genes. The mother had been in mourning ever since her son's death. She rejected Becca's request, believing that the laws of life and death were sacred and unbreakable. Helpless, Becca left. But a few days later, the man's father found her. Understanding Becca's deep grief over his son's passing, he secretly gave her the man's genetic material. Becca took the man's genetic material to the hospital, planning to use cloning to bring him back to life. With the most advanced cloning technology, the doctor helped Becca complete the genetic implantation. Her belly gradually grew, and now she was just waiting for her baby's arrival. As the day of birth approached, Becca gave birth to a new life, safely. She named him Tommy, as an eternal tribute to her husband. Every place she took little Tommy was a shared memory with her husband. She constantly sought ways to awaken little Tommy's past, but nothing ever worked. As time passed, little Tommy began to look more and more like his father in his youth. Whenever little Tommy asked about his father, Becca would always be vague, saying that her husband had died in a car accident. The sorrow in his mother's expression made little Tommy feel heartbroken, and he understood that it was unnecessary to press for more details. In his eyes, his mother was both independent and captivating, always showering him with her love and care. But sometimes, little Tommy also felt confused. His mother's gaze always revealed a hint of quiet unease. When they bathed together, there was always a subtle sense of flirtation in the air. Her constant need for control, even when playing with his friends, she would always be by little Tommy's side, prevented him from interacting with other girls, fearing that he might be taken away by another girl. Becca noticed a neglected little girl, who was alone and looking forlorn.